Are you sure this is enough? I mean, next to you, I look like I'm wearing repaired rags. Vernon asks Miro Noir, who lets out a little titter as she gives him a kiss on the cheek. Your dress uniform is fine, my love. You need to stop worrying so much. I'm only getting the one chance to make a good first impression, and family is important. I'd like to be on their good side. He frets, and she shakes her head fondly. The last few weeks had been nothing short of blissful. Vernon was attentive, sweet, and considerate. His commanding officer, Admiral Cistern, had not only given his blessing, but had given the soldier the next month off for a honeymoon, apparently a human tradition to celebrate the marriage with a vacation, as well as a rather astounding gift of raw coinage that apparently a large portion of the crew of the Dauntless had all contributed somewhat to. There had been talk about having a wedding ceremony when humans get out more easily from cruel space. He wanted his family there for it, which was so sweet. She could barely keep the dopey smile off her face whenever she thought about it. Don't worry about it. I'm not sure how it happens on your homeworld, but Apuk are very accepting of husbands, she assures him, and he runs a hand through his hair and chuckles. I know I'm being silly, my spicy sweet. It's just I worry. My mind too active to not consider all sorts of things, even those that just won't happen, he says, leaning against her and pulling her into a gentle hug. Miro Noir, my little eggy princess, a jubilant voice exclaims, and in moments a dark-haired Apuk wearing a small ornamental shell over her dress like a backpack all but crashes into Miro Noir and hugs her closely. Mommy, I mean mother, it's good to see you. Miro Noir corrects herself, even as Vernon smiles at the scene of clear love. My, Miro Noir, you marvelous young lady. Where did you find a tret in uniform, no less? Another Apuk asks, and Vernon turns to regard Miro Noir's other mothers. A gaggle of 10 Apuk women, all of them wearing a combination of shell and gown, most favoring the shell more than gown and more than half, are both very tall and very muscular. I'm afraid I'm no tret, ladies. I'm human, a bit more crude, I'm afraid. Vernon, you're not crude. Miro Noir chides him from the hug she's been partially released from. Compared to so lovely a lady? He asks, leaning up to give her a quick kiss on the lips. I'm afraid I am. Oh, so sweet and loving. Come here, you. Miro Noir's mother gushes as she pulls Vernon into the hug, alighting an eep of surprise from the soldier. My name is Sia Noir, but you can call me Mommy, too. Sia, let the poor tret breathe, another mother says, laughing as Vernon returns the hug before breaking away and pulling Miro Noir into a hug from behind. He's tall enough that her tail goes between his legs without any real danger. Oh no, he's no tret. He's human. Oh, come now, Miro Noir. Surely you don't believe that silly story on the news? It's obviously some kind of silly advertising for a thriller or even a softcore porn with action scenes. The largest of the mothers gently chides her, only for Sia to lightly swat her. Gutha, have some decorum, there's a man here. Sia chides her. Oh, don't worry. I'm a soldier. I've heard much, much worse. Though I am curious as to how I might prove myself to be a human rather than a tret, Vernon says calmly. His mind is racing, though. So there's a chunk of the galaxy that flat out doesn't believe they're real? That's interesting, but how to dispel it? Or maybe take advantage of it, as that's a perfect way to get around all sorts of limits and let a person cause all kinds of chaos. Something to tell the handlers on the Dauntless. Show me something no tret can do. Something unique to humans, Gutha says with a shrug, and Vernon considers. Oh, a bioscanner. Humans have some intriguing internal differences, particularly with the internal organs, Miro Noir says, and Vernon gives her an affectionate squeeze. An excellent idea. Heh, that reminds me. You remember the sheer disbelief on the officer's face when she scanned me for corrosives? Oh my, yes, the poor woman. She was not having a good day, Miro Noir says, and Vernon just chuckles. Anyone bring a scanner? Sia asks, and there are blank looks all around. Well, there are basic ones at the average restaurant, Vernon states, while also reminding the group as to where exactly the majority of this get-together was planned to be. He's right. Besides, girls, we were planning on introducing him to some Apuk dining. Let him know what he's in for, Sia says. Right, this way then, mothers. The branch of the shelled supper is quite close. Miro Noir says, and there's some good-natured chatter as the whole group starts moving. Curiously, they form a sort of protective ring around Vernon and Miro Noir, another little something to bring up when he next contacts the Dauntless. The restaurant they lead him to isn't massively fancy and not a family-owned establishment. Okay, it's probably a single family and a few locals running it, but it's part of a company. It's a chain, sit-down and don't feel too cheap restaurant, fancy for those that are counting their coins. Vernon is taking all the alien culture in that he can as they're led into an out-of-the-way dining room that Saya had apparently reserved. She wanted a chance to dote on her daughter and son-in-law, and the other girls had all pitched in. Just from what he was hearing and the general behavior, Vernon was pinging to the idea that all children are more or less commonly raised, but the biological parents have the ultimate authority. Menus are brought out and it's printed in galactic trade, but all the dishes are cultural. None of them are things he recognizes the words of beyond the prepositions, conjunctions, and determiners. The nouns are all completely foreign, and as such, the adjectives and adverbs are left rather pointless. First time eating Apuk style? Kia asks with a coy smile that Miro Noir definitely inherited. I'm afraid so. I know the language this is written in, but not what any of it means. He says, and there's some gentle chuckling. What do you recommend? Try the simmered Ulcan thigh. It's a classic, Miro Noir suggests, and he smiles at her. What? Oh no. This one is simmered in score extract, poisonous for traits. Gutha protests. Well, I do intend to prove myself as something other than a tret, and if they don't bring a bioscanner after an order like that, then eating it will be proof enough, Vernon says mildly. By the by, these drinks don't have an ethanol content or alcohol content on them. The pyre breath is the strongest, Miro Noir tells him and titters at the sight of her mother's looking concerned. That'll do for a light drink. I should have brought something off the Dauntless for a proper kick. Okay, that's it. I'm calling the bluff before someone gets hurt. Another of Miro Noir's mothers says, standing up and walking to no doubt borrow the device from the staff. I dare say you're all in for a surprise, Miro Noir says and lets out a giggle as Vernon leans over to give her a kiss. Well, delusional or not, I can't fault how well you've charmed him, Gutha remarks with a smile. That's when the mother that went in search of the scanner returns. Ah, excellent. Time to put this to rest. Indeed. Calibrate it for acidity, please. Followed by stimulants. Oh, you're showing off those glands? Miro Noir asks and he nods. It makes sense. No tret the galaxy over has anything like those. Not internally. But there are similar effects in a frenzy patch. Vernon reminds her, and she nods at the thought as her mother scans Vernon and gasps. How are you still alive? Quite comfortably. What seems to have you so concerned? Vernon asks with an impudent smile. You have high-grade acid concentrated in your abdomen. Good for digestion. Breaks down all sorts of poisons and more, Vernon says with a smile on his face. Not to mention how you've weaponized it, Miro Noir notes. Yes, but it's a rather dirty way to kill someone and we're about to have dinner, Vernon replies. Wait, you mentioned stimulants by the goddess. You're completely drugged. No, that's an incidental amount of adrenaline. The glands aren't pumping at the moment. And what does this adrenaline do? A large increase to reaction speed, shuts down my sense of pain, and there's a few tricks with human muscles that it unlocks. What trick? They're actually a lot stronger than we normally have access to, but our bones aren't actually strong enough to use all that power without breaking. Generally, I'm using maybe 60-70% of it, so it's not an insubstantial boost. Oh my gracious, the amount of pheromones you're pumping out? The mother with the bioscanner says, and Miro Noir starts giggling as Vernon just scratches the back of his neck ruefully. I thought you just overdid cologne for some reason, not this. I actually have deodorant on. It cuts back on the scent and the pheromones, yet it still smells like I've been swimming in it, hasn't it? He asks, and she looks at the bioscanner in fascination. There's a higher concentration in my spit, he says, and the little bit of conversation ends as a waitress walks in. A very, very short woman with bright pink hair and a clipboard. Hello, I'm Morga. I'm your waitress tonight. Can I get you started on drinks, or do you all know what you want? Oh, I know what I want. So does my hubby here. Mothers, you all remember your favorites, I hope? Miro Noir asks, and their smiles all around and the orders are quickly said as the menus are collected. She pauses when Vernon orders simmered Ulcan thigh with a glass of pyre breath on the side. Are you sure? That's all for Apoc biology. Unless breathing fire's a pastime for you, handsome, then it's a pretty rough meal. I'll be fine, I'm human, not a tret, he says, and she gasps. Really? It true that you consider Wicked Winter and Farracus Flame to be seasonings? She asks, and he nods before grinning. Here, scan this, he says, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small case with tiny white pills. He levers one into his palm and holds it out for examination. Morga is given the scanner and examines it, causing her eyes to widen. Concentrated Wicked Winter, she declares, and he nods before making a point of placing it on his tongue. It's just flavor for me, he says to the stunned waitress. Wow. Okay, so it was simmered Ulcan thigh and a glass of pyre breath. Got it, she says, writing it down and giving a slight bow before rushing out. Can I tempt anyone? He asks, and there's a pause before everyone except Miro Noir puts out their hand for a sample. 10 Tic Tacs are handed out, and to both Vernon's and Miro Noir's amusement, 10 tongues of flame erupt into the air to clear out the sheer overpowering taste. When they look down, Vernon pops in another 3 into his own mouth and crunches down on them. How much can you withstand? Friends in the EFL have said that there have been instances where spicy peppers they've eaten were stolen by other races who die of shock when they bite into them. You're kidding. I didn't see it myself, but seeing as you all prefer a mouthful of literal fire over a breath mint, I believe it. He's actually been doing most of the cooking, seeing what human dishes I can handle, which is most of them so long as he stays away from the spice rack. But that's where the flavor of the meal comes from, Vernon protests with a wide smile. Flavor is fine. An entire layer of ground pane kernels and sodium chloride is another matter entirely, she responds, and he chuckles. Still, he's an excellent cook when he can resist his urge to poison things. She semi-teases, semi-compliments him, and he chuckles. Speaking of poison, it looks like our drinks have arrived, Vernon says as the door opens and Morga wheels in a trolley. Poison? No, I wouldn't. Human slang. I'm sorry. Poison can be slang for alcohol or other narcotics, Vernon says with his hands up as if in surrender. Oh, all right then. Odd, but all right, Morga says before handing out the drinks. Here you go, big man. 1 pyre breath. Thank you, he says, and take a sip. Oh, it's like a white wine. Here I was thinking I'd ordered something like a rum or a whiskey, not something so tame. Tame? It dries out the mouth, making you feel like your tongue is tinder set for a pyre, Sia protests, and Vernon laughs. Oh, is that all? Drinks aren't considered exciting for my kind until we can light them on fire before drinking them. This is the sort of thing I was allowed to have as a small child.